Welcome to the Dawn Jarvis Show with Dawn Jarvis, the diverse nurse. And in this podcast, we will be talking about healthcare, self-care, diversity, careers, and well-being from a Black woman's perspective. We're really happy that you're here. So if you're ready, let's get on with the show.
Hello, everybody. Here we are again at the Dawn Jarvis Show. This is the podcast and YouTube show that is around health and well-being. And I'm interviewing in this series members of my diverse nurse network and people I've met in my journey as a business owner. And I'm discussing health and well-being from a Black woman's perspective, and also business owners and how they keep themselves healthy and wealthy and wise as well. I'm very pleased today to have my special guest, Ezra Ben Israel. It's really good to be here. How are you, Ben? Good to meet you today.
Thank you. Yes, I'm good. Thank you. I'm well.
It's really Glad good to be here. Great. I'm going to introduce you. So Ben is the founder and director of Edifying Answers, a training consultancy. He has a passion for well-being, helping individuals develop strategic well-being practices in their personal and professional lives. Ezra has over 14 years of experience supporting individuals around their self-care, well-being, confidence building, substance misuse, and recovery. Ezra, that's amazing. Edifying Answers. How did you get to be here?
Well, I guess I've always been helping and supporting people around well-being. So I started off working within the substance misuse field in 2005. I worked in a prison setting for 12 and a half years.
Oh, wow.
And I think in that environment, one of the things I found was that there was always a lack of materials to really help and empower people. And so I've always been of the frame of mind that if it's not good enough and you don't like it, then make something better.
That's good.
And so whenever I was working with clients, I would then, if they came in with an issue, I would design a worksheet specifically to deal with that issue, and then I would have that to use with any other clients. And over the years, it just built up and it built up and it built up in terms of materials that I have, mind mapping tools and worksheets. And so what I then started to get into was delivering groups. And then as I went up the ranks and I was no longer doing frontline work, I was missing that. So I got into the training side of things to train the staff so that they could do the things that was needed to support the clients. And over the years, people kept saying to me, you should start your business. You should do something around this. And for a long period of time, I delayed and I procrastinated because I couldn't see what everyone else could see. And that's why in terms of the work I do now is very much about changing our mindsets, dealing with our mindsets, because I understand how much that hindered me for a long period of my life. And what happened was, it was interesting. One time I was doing a training, I was helping someone out and I was going to do a training for free. Because someone couldn't make it. So I stepped in and I did it. And when I had finished the training, the people loved it. They really loved it. And so the lady actually started to promote me to other people. And a week later, I got a call from someone saying, we want you to do a training. We don't need to test anything. We've heard about you and we'll pay you for it.
Wow.
And I was like, okay. And so it started from there. I said, right, let's do this. Like, that was the sign for me. That was the final epiphany where I was like, I can't deny this anymore.
That's good.
And so, a few years back, I said, let's do it. And I set up Edifying Answers, and it's just been great since then, just growing, evolving, developing.
That's amazing, because that's how I met you. So we were connected on LinkedIn anyway, but I went to a training that you were delivering in it was online and by a local government agency in London, and it was amazing. And I sort of went to look you up and then realized we were connected anyway. So that was good. And it was like, so I wanted to hear more about it. And the training was around well-being. It was around how people are coping in the in the pandemic around how, you know, people are moving to the new normal because we're, you know, transitioning into a new space, aren't we? And
Yes,
it was
definitely.
really, really, really good. And it, you know, so it was, you know, it was a really, really good training. I was very impressed with it. And
Thank you.
it's amazing how the journey from moving to sort of like, you know, working in a helping capacity. So working in a prison must have been very, very challenging. And also, you know, I was hearing what you were saying about, you know, there's a lack of materials, maybe a lack of frameworks in how to do that work. And so if it's not there, invent it yourself. And I really also like how you turned that into a business, and how that it started through word of mouth, through referral, people
Yeah.
seeing what you were doing and realizing the value that you may not have thought, oh yeah, this can be a business, but people told you that repeatedly, and then you got the referral and got
Yes.
paid for it. That's amazing. But
Yeah.
talking
Yeah.
about, you know, being in the prisons and sort of like starting your own sort of frameworks, you know, how was that? You know, because I think that happens a lot, isn't it? You'll be in a situation, you can see a need, and then you
Yeah.
filled the need, didn't you?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, you know, often we're on a journey, and sometimes we don't know which way that's going to end up or turn out to be. And so it can be that fear of the unknown that stops us.
Yeah.
But I think like events happen in our life that's always leading us and guiding us on a journey. And it's just if we are open to see what life is trying to teach us, what the universe is trying to show us, what the situations in our life is trying to reveal, what's the lesson. So I always say to people, even when you lose the game, don't lose the lesson. There's always something to learn out of everything that happens in your life. And I think the time and the years of me working in the prison really built me up in so many ways. You know, I learned so many things. I saw so many things.
Yeah.
It helps me to value life in a different way, to appreciate fresh air, you know,
Yes.
freedom, you know,
Freedom. Yes.
you know, I used to work. So one of my roles within the prison, I did voluntary work as well. I was paid, but I was also doing voluntary work as an act assessor, which is basically whenever someone tries to commit suicide or plans to commit suicide, I will be one of the people who would go in to do crisis intervention.
Wow.
And like experience of like that and working with people in that capacity, it changes you.
Absolutely.
You know, I view life completely different from the average person because I understand and seen so much of how life can treat you and how life can end up when you make a bad decision. So I'm very much about empowering people. And over those 12 and a half years, I was always dealing with cure. You know, it's already gone bad. They're in the criminal justice system. They're addicted to substances, you know, they're at their rock bottom. And so I wanted to start to be a part of the prevention. So reaching people before they make those bad decisions that actually change their life. And so I'm very passionate about well-being and helping people to grow and achieve and live their best life.
That's amazing. I think particularly during the last 18 months, during the sort of like pandemic, and you know, we're still in the pandemic, it's still happening, we're just learning to live with it, aren't we? I think I know for me that it was a crisis. It was a crisis in my job. You know, I worked for a health agency. It was a crisis in my home, around, you know, I've got grown-up children, and you know, they were just starting careers and things were not going very well for them, and then we were stuck at home for a long time, which was difficult. And then, you know, it was a crisis in lots of things around family. My mother wasn't very well, you know, quite seriously unwell, and thank goodness she recovered, but it was a very difficult time.
Yeah.
And I really hear what you're saying around developing that resilience before things happen, you know, because that was a crisis for the world. It was a crisis for the world, it was a crisis for the country, it was a crisis for individuals, for families, for industries, for all sorts of things. And there sort of needs to be some well-being resilience. And I think you know, I know I had to sort of like really dig deep with my reserves. And you know, I definitely wasn't ready for that, but you never are ready when a crisis
Never are.
are you?
Never are.
But a
No.
good way is to sort of like develop and practice self-care and well-being, isn't it? So that when the tough times come, that you've got that steady steady state that you know that you can draw on. And
Yeah.
so how important do you feel that practicing self-care and well-being is?
It's fundamental. It's fundamental. So I always say to people, self-care and well-being is the internal version of brushing your teeth.
Wow.
It's something you have to do every day. And sometimes people do it twice. Many people do it twice a day.
Yes.
And you don't ever say to yourself, right, today I'm going to brush my teeth for an hour and I don't need to do it for the rest of the week. It never happens.
That is true.
It doesn't matter how tired you are. You could come in late from a party or something and you still brush your teeth. Like it's paramount. Yeah. And that's exactly what well-being is for me anyway.
Yeah.
And so
I love that.
So when I'm thinking about like self-care, so when we break down those two words, so when we're talking about self, we're talking about your personality, we're talking about character, we're talking about identity, and we're talking about your nature. And then when we're talking about care, we're talking about attention. So when you care for something, it's about the upkeep. When you buy a new pair of trainers, like you don't want them to get dirty, you upkeep them, you wipe it if there's any marks on it.
For real.
Right? And then it's about maintenance and it's about repair. Yeah. So that's why if you have a car, you make sure it gets MOT every year because it's about repair. It's about making sure that things stand the test of time.
Yeah.
So when we add those two words together, my definition that I've made up for self-care is when you are aware and mindful on a holistic level. So you pay attention to the upkeep, maintenance, and the repair of all facets of your being. So that's mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, socially, financially. It's every area of your being that you are making sure that you are taking care of it, managing it, and keeping it well watered, well oiled, well lubricated so that it can stand the test of time. Because health is wealth and it should be a priority for everyone. And it's one of those things, as the saying says, you don't know what you've got until it's gone. And once health is gone, and all of us can pay homage to a time when we've been really unwell and nothing else mattered. The bills didn't matter in that time. What people thought about you didn't matter in that time. The trivial arguments or things that we were holding on to didn't mean anything in that time because health is true wealth. And so it's so important that we make it priorities in our life and we don't allow things like careers, work, and all the other things that often gets put before our health to become the priority.
Wow. That's amazing. That is really good. I say amazing a lot, I've realized, because I've walked on the internet. But that is amazing. I think, health is wealth. That's currency. Health is currency, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Really. And it's, and you save it and you take what you need, but you need a little bit all the time. Like I always like to have a £20 note in my purse all the time, even though I mostly use my card. But it's nice to have that cash there and to know there's cash in the bank as well, isn't there?
Yes.
So that is really, really good. And do you have a model that you use to sort of a framework around well-being that you use?
Absolutely. So the model that I ascribe to is the 5 ways to well-being, which is those 5 areas is be active, connect, take notice, keep learning, and give. And so this was backed by research by the New Economic Foundation, which shows that there are 5 simple things that individuals can do as part of your daily life at work and at home to build resilience, to boost your well-being and lower the risk of developing mental health problems. And it's known internationally as the 5 ways to well-being. And so these 5 things are simple things that you can do in your daily life. And so if we say be active, one of the things around be active, what I always tell people is that it's not about the big things, it's about the small things. And it's not about what you do once, it's about what you consistently do. So I would say to people, you know what, if you do 10 press ups every day for the year, that's better than doing 50 for 2 months and then stopping. And so it's about consistency. Another thing that I always say to people is that when you're doing things to be active, do things that you enjoy. There is no point doing something that you loathe because you won't keep it up. Whenever you get an opportunity to have an excuse or a justification to deviate from it, you will. And so if you like gardening, then garden. You know, you're tired after you've been out in the garden all day. If you like dancing, put on some music. You'll be sweating after listening to that CD and that album which you've danced to, you know. And even simple things like walking. Like, so much people do not understand the benefits of walking. It has collateral benefits. So even to the point, if someone has had a heart attack and they start walking for 30 minutes every day, it reduces their chance of a second heart attack by 70%.
Oh, wow.
So there is so much simple things that we can do, taking the stairs rather than the lift, that we can do to actually help ourselves become more healthy. It doesn't mean that you have to go to the gym 5 times a week. And so it's really important about the simple things we can do to be active. They say now that sitting is the new smoking because lots of people are working from home and everything. So it's about every hour, get up and do a little stretch for 5 minutes, do, you know, jogging on the spot, whatever it is, but just do something to keep yourself active. So then we have connect, which is about how we do connect with other people. What are those things that we're doing? And not just people, nature. You know, there's so much things that we can be connected to. And the opposite of connection, if we think of it on a continuum, is isolation. And isolation kills. And so we are social beings, we're social creatures. So it's important to connect to those things that's of value to you. People, places, nature, whatever it may be. One of the interesting things that research has shown from the Mental Health Foundation, that nature has been one of the greatest things to help people cope during this pandemic, actually getting out in nature, because it's forced people to stop for a moment and actually embrace what's going on around them, embrace and look at the beauty around you when you're at home, when you're in these environments. And then we've got take notice, which is things like meditation, yoga, mindfulness, breathing, all of these things that are paramount to human well-being. I mean, breathing is the first and the last thing you're guaranteed to do in this world. And so, you know, when we breathe the right way, it can bring healing to us. So when we take slower breaths, it activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest and our digest, and it helps to calm us. It actually can change our moods. So there's simple things that we can do to really help our well-being. And then we've got to keep learning. You know, every day should be a lesson. Every day should be a school day. And it doesn't have to be formal in terms of going to college and stuff like that, but we can learn from listening to a podcast. We can learn from watching a TED Talk. We can learn from just examining an interaction between two people. And then give. Give is one of the fundamental ones that I like to focus on, because whenever I do exercises with teams and organizations around this 5 ways to well-being, and we get to the give element, they'll start talking about what they've done here and a charity that they supported and volunteering here. And very rarely do I hear anyone ever say about giving to themselves. And it's important to remember that we cannot give and pour out of an empty jug. And so if your jug is at 20% in terms of well-being and self-care and motivation, I can only give someone 100% out of 20%. But if I'm making sure that I am doing my internal version of brushing my teeth every day and my jug is at 80%, I can give people 100% out of 80%. And so we owe it to ourselves to ensure and make sure that we're giving to ourselves so we can then give to our families and our colleagues and our clients. But if we don't do that, then we run the risk of actually having poor health and ill health. And then no one benefits from that.
I hear you.
So it's a very simple model, but very effective. And it can be used in so many different ways.
That's really good. I really like that. I love the way you explained it. And I love the examples. I've heard the jug analogy before for the previous guest, and it's a really good one. And I really like what you said around 100% of 20% is only 20%, isn't it? Really.
Yeah.
And that if you give all of it, then you have none, won't you? So that is no, you need to be really, really careful about that. Now, people don't, you talked about, people have to practice, and, I think we talk about goal setting and things like that. What would you suggest would be the best thing to sort of like set some goals around well-being for yourself?
One of the things that I often ask people is, what are you currently doing? And what's one thing that you'd like to improve?
Mm-hmm.
And with those two questions, I get so much content, I get so much information, because what happens is either people are doing stuff, and so in that's great because I can give an affirmation which reinforces that behavior, or they say, I would like to do, I want to do, one day I hope to do. And that helps me to know and recognize what's important for them. And then I help them to break that down into SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely, so that they can then actually apply that into their life. And I think it will just all depend on the individual. I think what is the major problem that I find what happens is we mentally trip ourselves up. We get in our own way. There is always narratives that we put in our mind to tell us there's some reason why we can't do it. And I think that's the major battle, what people face on a day-to-day basis. It's what we're telling ourselves. Because, the interesting thing about our mind is that whatever you tell it, it believes.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very, very true.
And
I like the way that you also ask what people would like to do, and I think what you're saying is sort of creating a path so that the things that people would like to do, so how can you get to the things that you would like to do. But I also like what you're saying about affirming what people are already doing as well. So it's sort of like, what are you doing now? That's brilliant, that's great. What would you like to do, and how can we get there as well? That's really good. Now, I'm a nurse, so I always ask this of my guests. So how, you help people with their health and well-being. What about your own health and well-being? Do you practice what you preach? Do you embody what you say?
Oh yes, definitely. So I think for me personally, well-being is so important to me. It's a priority in my life, and that's why I'm so passionate and why I talk about it the way I do. So I start my day with intention, and I always tell people this: start your day with intention. Don't just get up. Wake up with intention. What's your goals for the day? Mine personally, I start every day, I do my affirmations, I do my visualization boards, I do my breathing, I do my training, my exercise. So I train myself so that mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally, I am prepared to handle and overcome whatever I have to face for that day. I have intention with everything that I do. And I know that in order for me to be the best version of myself, I have to prep myself, and I have to train myself, and I have to make sure that I am ready to deal with, because I have hectic days, and I have to ensure that I am that best version of myself. And so that doesn't happen by accident, and it doesn't happen by chance. It happens by design. And that's why discipline is so important. It's so important.
Brilliant. And thanks for that. That's really good, because it's sort of like, it's a way of life, isn't it? It's like a religion. It's like, how you live your life, your values. It's really important to me. And so I teach it, I do it, and this is the example. And that's not to deny that everyone has their own stresses and strains and bad days and good days, but what I hear you saying is that you've got a background in that you set your day with intention, you have goals that you're going to achieve, and that you do that, and you've got a framework for doing that. So that's really good.
I think I was just going to say, I think the other thing for me personally is I really understand the power of the mind. Okay. And so I make sure I keep it in the zone and in the frame that I want it to be. And what I mean by that is there's a saying that says, where the mind goes, the energy flows.
Yeah.
And so if you allow your mind to run away like a runaway train in that wrong area or direction, your energy, your frequency, your focus is going to be derailed. And so the average human being has about 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day. 90% of those thoughts are rumination. And research shows that up to 70% of those thoughts in many people is negative.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we are not careful and if we are not managing it, I always say the mind is the battlefield, and every battle is won and lost first in the mind. And so it's about throughout that day, keeping stock, being mindful of what you're giving yourself over to, what you are focusing on, and what your mind is being entertained by, because the mind is a muscle and every thought is a rep. So if you imagine if you're doing curls to strengthen your arms, the more reps you do is the more defined and the stronger it becomes. Well, if you think of your thoughts the same way, if you are constantly worrying and anxious about something, you are developing that muscle, that pathway in your brain. And so your brain is going to be paying attention to that.
Yeah.
And so mindfulness is very important.
Right, thank you. That is really, really good and very, very powerful. I like the expression where the mind goes, the energy flows. It is so true. And I like the analogy around practicing as you would practice any skill, that that makes you stronger and it makes you better. So these are all fantastic tips. Is there anything that you would like to leave our audience with?
If I was to leave you with one thing, it would be that energy is one of our greatest resources. So invest in it wisely. And what I mean by that is that we are energy. Okay, when we go underneath our skin, if you get a microscope and you look under it, beneath the atoms and everything, it's raw energy. Okay, and so there are 3 ways that we can charge ourselves, because we are energy, just like a phone will be charged. There's 3 ways that we can charge ourselves. The first one is food. Anyone who's fasted for a few days would understand what that means. Yeah, when you get that food, it energizes you. Yeah. The second one is sleep. Sleep is paramount. Like, our life is dependent on sleep. We heal during when we're asleep. Our body recuperates. The melatonin, and it goes forth like a DIY system and it repairs us. It's paramount. And the third one is our thoughts. Those are the 3 ways that we charge ourselves. But also, it's important to recognize that our thoughts are energy. If you think about it this way, when you think about something, if you hear bad news, and you start to thinking about that, what does it do to you? It affects your whole body. It affects how you feel. It affects how you act. It makes you feel lethargic. But if it's a positive thing, it makes you feel elevated. It makes you feel joyful. Because what they have found is that when our brain is active, it has enough energy to charge a 15 to 25 watts bulb. So that's energy.
Mm-hmm.
But energy can also be transferred, because when you have a thought that is strong enough, it creates an emotional chain reaction, which is what we call an emotion. Mm-hmm. Now, emotion is short for energy plus motion, because it's energy in motion. You see, words is the language of the brain, and emotions is the language of the body, but it's emotional currents. And as a result of that, it then affects how we behave. Mm-hmm. And so energy is your greatest resource. So how we think, how we speak, how we feel, and how we act is all transference of energy. So use it wisely. Do not invest your energy in counterproductive discussions. Do not waste your energy focusing on something you can't control. Do not waste your energy thinking about what might happen, because if it's going to happen, at that point, worry about it, Because it might not happen, and you'll find that you've wasted all of this energy for something that didn't even manifest. So I would say to people, energy is one of your greatest resources. Invest in it wisely.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. That was really great. Energy is one of your greatest resources. So Ezra, how can people get in touch with you, access your training, etc.?
Yes, so I'm on all social media. So I'm on Instagram as Edifying Answers. I'm on Facebook as Edifying Answers. But also on my website, you can go in there. I have loads of different toolkits. I have one particular webinar recording that I've recently done, which is called "It's a New Season, Time to Evolve," and it was really about helping people, especially during these last 12 to 18 months, with all that people have gone through. People's confidence has gone. People have been, find it really difficult to kind of manage and cope. They've kind of lost their way and not sure on what their purpose is and what's the next step forward for them. So this was really designed to kind of help people with that, because a new start is a state of mind. And it's important that people understand that it starts with a state of mind. And so in this workshop, this recording of this webinar, it's a 2-hour webinar, we explore some key themes, such as exploring the importance of clarity, both psychologically and emotionally. We examine the importance of knowing your why and purpose and how that can really shape you for success. We reflect on life's unexpected detours, like the pandemic, and how we navigate through them. It's about giving people a greater awareness of our mindsets and our thoughts and how they shape our reality. So there's lots of research in there about neuroplasticity and neuroscience, and how we can actually use things that's evidence-based and proven to actually shape our realities. And it also looks over the essential steps of manifesting the things that you want, how you can actually do key things to get those things that you want. And it also looks at the benefits of visualization and showing how many people have used that as a part of their success. And the final thing is about dismantling outdated and limiting belief systems that hold people back, because I believe that is the fundamental thing. And one of the things in particular that holds people back is perfection. I need to wait until I'm better. I need to wait until I've got this together. And we are never perfect, and it's never the perfect moment. The time is always now. And the final thing you can get me on is also my YouTube channel. So I have a YouTube channel called Ezra Voice of Reason. I have over 150 different motivational videos and talks on there. So people can also go on that if you want to see more of me.
Brilliant. And this has been an education. And go check out those tours. I've already attended one of your seminars and it was fantastic. So I do recommend it. This has been absolutely wonderful. And thank you for sort of like setting that out and talking about the importance of self-care and well-being. Thank you very much, Ezra, for your time. And for everybody, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to the Dawn Jarvis Show. If you enjoyed this episode, there are 2 things you can do. Number 1, leave Dawn a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts. It would mean so much to her if you took a moment out of your time to post your thoughts on the show. It will help Dawn reach so many more people and help them with their well-being. Number 2, subscribe to Dawn's email list, the Diverse Nurse Digest, using the link in the show notes. Until the next time, thank you and goodbye.